So the issue is not about truth, telling white folk the truth of African history, the truth of our contributions to America, the truth of our great ancient past. For these people are not going to give up their privileges and wealth and power merely because they learned that you are Egyptians, or because you've contributed to American wealth, or these other things. It's too addictive for that. They will say, so what? Good for you. We are still holding on to what we got. And if you get in the way of what we got, we will crush you, Egyptian past or not. So the idea then that you're going to have a truth crusade that will rescue you from the subordination to white power is an illusion, and one you should rapidly get over.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to, I believe it's our 4th edition of the Mau Mau Hour with Pascal Robert. I am going to go off screen, but before I do, please welcome, coming all the way, live from Miami, Florida, he is Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Salutations to Jason Miles. Welcome to This is Revolution, the Mau Mau Hour, which is my last Wednesday of the month episode.
Did you hear that?
Shots fired.
Because you're here, there's shots fired. Like every time you speak, it's like shots are being fired.
Thank you for that, Jason. I would like to thank all of you for being able to join us this evening. We're going to have a little conversation, and after my conversation, we're going to have a bit of a question and answer, same format that we had for the last Mau Mau Hour. The subject matter for today's Mau Mau Hour is a particular aspect. I don't know if tradition is the right word or element of Black political thought and Black intellectual history that has existed, I would say, going back to the 19th century. And what made me decide to talk about this phenomenon is based on a piece I wrote in 2013 called The Politics of Redemption and Black Leadership Revisited, which is really more so about the politics of redemption. I will share that link for you if you have not found it. You can find it in Huffington Post. It was also published in Black Agenda Report. And what inspired me to write this piece entitled The Politics of Redemption was the phenomenon of the Obama presidency, which was in its second term at that time, and analyzing and seeing how the Obama presidency was used as a means to basically instruct Black folk that Obama was going to redeem or vindicate them. In the beginning of the video, we had Dr. Amos Wilson, famous Pan-Africanist and Black nationalist intellectual who had passed away, who was talking about the notion that believing that somehow you are going to educate American or white power vis-a-vis your African past or your cultural contributions or your wonderful civilizations, that you're going to have some kind of truth crusade with the power elite in American capital that will somehow enable you to liberate yourself from your oppression, is a fantasy that particularly Black people need to escape from. And why I chose that video from Amos Wilson is that as someone who went to college in the United States, someone went to college in the U.S., who studied Black history, who, has read some of the greats from the 19th century. It has always been something that I noticed, this attempt and desire to vindicate Blackness to the ruling class. So the premise of my piece in The Politics of Redemption is to basically say that one of the problems with this constant need to prove your legitimacy or prove that you deserve to be respected, that you prove that you deserve to be taken seriously, to demonstrate by your civilizational skills and history that you should be reckoned with. One of the most dangerous results of this racial vindication or politics of redemption is that by the nature of that dynamic, you are giving the oppressive forces that are stopping you from functioning as a member of society the determining power to say whether you are human or not. In other words, if the gambit that we're playing with this racial vindicationism, with this politics of redemption, is that we've got to prove, we've got to demonstrate our capacity, we've got to prove our abilities, we've got to show what we can do. I mean, this is thinking that goes back to Frederick Douglass, Carter G. Woodson, Du Bois, Black intellectuals of the 19th century, 20th century. That if Black folk are able to prove and show what we're able to do, what we're capable of achieving, that somehow the power structure is going to say, okay, we agree. Absolutely. Now we'll treat you fairly. And what even Amos Wilson in that video as a Black nationalist, and my politics differ in that regard on Black nationalism, is saying is that it's too addictive for that. The power of capital and wealth is too addictive for that. They will say, so what? These people are not going to acquiesce in their control of the ruling class. Capital and the power elite are not going to acquiesce in their control of the ruling class just because they find out that you are Egyptians or that you contributed to American civilization. They will say, so what? Good for you. We're still keeping what we have. Even when you actually read early writings, going back to the beginnings of Haiti as a nation state after the Haitian Revolution, you read people like Baon de Vaté, who was a major Haitian intellectual. You read some of the writing of the Dessalinian authors around that time, the writers around Henri Christophe. This need to view Haiti and the Haitian Revolution as a vindication of Blackness, as a vindication of the Black race, as somehow we will prove that all you say about us is wrong. Well, one of the reasons why that thinking is problematic is also because it's fundamentally not materialist. What do I mean by that? It's based on a belief that the reason you are oppressed as a Black person is not tied to the economic benefit of capitalism that is rendered disproportionately to the white power structure by your subjugation, and somehow simply having a moral truth crusade with power and capital will allow you the ability to be able to change your condition. It's also based on the capacity of you to emotionally leverage some kind of intellectual sympathy or empathy from the power elite and ruling class structure to say, you know what, we were wrong about these folks. They've done so many wonderful things. They've achieved so much throughout history. We were wrong in oppressing them. It completely misdiagnoses the rationale for your oppression and divorces the rationale from your oppression from the fact that it's being done because you are in your labor and your presence extracted of value for that same power and ruling class. Of course, they use the fact that they don't respect you, your humanity, or your culture, or your civilizational capacity as a pretext. But the ultimate reality is, whether they know or not about your great civilizations of the past or your contributions, is not going to change the fact that their economic model is based on rendering you to the bottom of the barrel so they can make sure that the majority of the population doesn't realize that the same system that's crushing you is crushing large numbers of them, which is the ultimate charade of what capitalism does. So when we consider this politics of redemption and racial vindicationism, we have to understand that it kind of sets Black people up into this kind of vicious cycle. This vicious cycle where you literally are trying to show the people who have an economically vested interest in not respecting you that they need to respect you because you can achieve something. Doesn't this demonstrate a certain level of dependence on those people for your recognition in the first place? Another aspect of this constant vindication, need for redemption, or need to redeem yourself is that it never stops. Every time you achieve or we have the first Black this, or the first Black that, or the first this, or the first that, or this person is the corporate CEO, and look at this wonderful, then there's all the goalpost is always moved. Because they're always going to be able to find an example of, XYZ happened today. They go, you know those Black folk, you know those Negroes. So it creates this kind of ridiculous, vicious cycle. And just to show you how old this thinking is, right? Listen to this. This is a quote from Frederick Douglass in 1848 from the speech, "What are the colored people doing for themselves?" This is from Frederick Douglass. "It is a doctrine held by many good men in Europe as well as in America that every oppressed people will gain their rights just as soon as they prove themselves worthy of them. And although we may justly object to the extent to which this doctrine is carried, especially in reference to ourselves as a people, it must still be evident to all that there is a great truth in it." Frederick Douglass, 1848, from a speech, "What are the colored people doing for themselves?" Understand something. 1848? What are the colored people doing for themselves? Most of them are on a plantation getting whipped picking cotton. Yet, because obviously Frederick Douglass is probably talking to the free people of color communities, there's somehow this belief that he assumes it's a logical function that oppressed people must prove themselves. How is that worked out? Did the presence of Obama, does the presence of Kamala Harris, does the presence of the black political class redeem and vindicate black people? Do all those nice, icy, beautiful, glossy pictures from Ebony magazine and Jet and Black History Month calendars, do they somehow make black people seem more human to the power elite and the forces of capital? How does that work? I want to let Jason step in here and let him speak on.
Hold on 1 second. Let me turn my camera back on. Did you get my message? Here, I'll take you off here for a second, Pascal. So are you guys enjoying Pascal's rant? I hope everybody is enjoying this. He's been talking about this for some time. He showed us this clip a while ago, and he has been preparing this for you guys, and I knew it was going to be a doozy. And actually, before we got on there, we were actually having a conversation about this very subject, and it's actually going to be, I'm still debating if it's going to be part of the part 2 that I'm writing for the thing I did on Sam Cedar. Oh, it looks like Pascal is back. So he's going to be wrapping up his rant in about the next 10 minutes or so. And after that, he is answering all of your questions in real time. I'm actually excited for this because you guys usually ask really good questions. So that's one of the things that our guests always say, is that they are so shocked at how intelligent the audience is.
Thank you so much, Jason. I want to take this time to demonstrate. Now, we use that Frederick Douglass quote to illustrate how far this thinking goes back. This is actually a piece I found in the Journal of African American History. Biography, Race Vindication, and African American Intellectuals. This is in the Journal of African American History. This is a piece by V.P. Franklin and Betty Collier Thomas. Basically, they're talking about the history of the Journal of Negro History that was started by Carter G. Woodson in 1916. And they say the first issue of the Journal of Negro History appeared shortly thereafter in January 1916, and Carter G. Woodson, the editor, made it clear that this was to be a quarterly scientific magazine committed to publishing scholarly research and documents on the history and cultures of Africa and peoples of African descent around the world. From the beginning, Carter G. Woodson knew that the Journal of Negro History would be important for race vindication. When the public saw a well-printed scientific magazine presenting scholarly current articles and valuable documents giving facts scarcely known, Woodson recalled in 1925, the students of history and correlated fields highly praised this effort and warmly welcomed the publication. Woodson understood that publishing these articles and collecting this material was the only way that the Negro could escape the awful fate of becoming a negligible factor in the thought of the world. Understand this. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, literally is believing that somehow telling the Western world of the great historical achievements of the Black past in Africa will magically make all of the horrible vicissitudes that the Black race suffers disappear because the world will come to know. And again, what is Amos Wilson telling you? that truth crusade is a bankrupt endeavor. It's an absolutely bankrupt endeavor, and it will take you nowhere, because the material realities of power and the power elite are not based on recognizing or not recognizing what your historical achievements are as Black people, or whether or not you built the pyramids, or whether or not you come from the doggone empire and your people were contemplating the stars over 1,000 years ago, or you're a descendant of the Mali Empire. One, why do you assume that the people or the systems that are oppressing you aren't aware of that? And number two, why do you think that them knowing that information is going to change their relationship to you? So at this stage, my purpose in this was to let people be aware of how far back this history of this politics of redemption and racial vindicationism goes, and why it needs to be abandoned, and why we need to stop with this first black face in a high place and move on to a materialist politics that's rooted in challenging capitalism and imperialism and changing us into an economic model that redistributes wealth and power to poor and working class people, especially Black and brown people, so that we don't have to worry about the psychologically debilitating legacy of believing that we have to prove ourselves to the people who oppress us and to those who run the systems of oppression. And on that note, I will now open up questions. Jason, if you have any commentary you'd like to make or ask, please join in. I guess Jason,
no, not at all. Not at all. I have nothing to add. There's nothing I can add to that beautiful soliloquy.
So, folks, if we have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll take them on. Nobody has any questions? Shirley, I know you got to have some questions. The chat just froze, Jason.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with people, man. That's kind of whack. Can I hold the I don't know why. That's so fucking funny to me right now. There you go.
Okay, Jesse has a question. Isn't every celebration of a Black face in a high place a celebration of the construction of the intermediate social control stratum that serves the oppressed, the proletariat? Absolutely. Yes, Jesse. I totally agree that the concept that we have to celebrate Black first is a form of redemption, of vindication politics. It leverages all this power on the systems of oppression it makes it seem like they are the ones who determine our humanity. Shirley has a question. Is it redemption for ourselves? Can you lift that question? What was Shirley's question, Jason? Is it redemption for ourselves?
I can't move it on the screen, but I can read it for you. Shirley's question is it redemption for ourselves versus the wider world? Here, this is her question. You see it now?
This is the question: is why do we believe that Black people are somehow so damaged and broken that they need self-esteem boosters to be able to function in society without simply giving them the material capacity to function in a society economically and materially?
I mean, it's the Cosby pull up your pants, not necessarily the pound cake speech, but like the pull up your pants-ness of it all. Our good friend Pete Rock just shared on his Instagram, and some of these 90s guys are like the worst, but he shared a clip from that movie The Equalizer with Denzel. Did you ever watch that?
Yes.
And there's the scene where Denzel has like the gun to the young Black kid's head who's kind of on the verge of being in a gang and not, like, hey, don't blame anyone but yourself for your problem. Like, he's literally saying this with a gun to the kids. It's like, you have a chance to do something with your life, but you're choosing not to. And it's not the white man's fault. It's not society's fault. And I don't care if your mom did drugs. It's just your fault.
Band of Strays asks a good question. Isn't the Black redemption narrative also a driver of assimilation into capitalism by trapping oppressed people in the vicious cycle of proving their value to capital? I think that's a very strong part of it as well. Yes, indeed, I agree with that, Bandit. How do we get about divorcing the black professional class whose interest is in black first from the black working class post black power? That is a very good question, Lyle Evans. I think that we
That's
have to
what gives them their positions in the professional class, is by determining these black first, right? The black
Yes.
professional. Yeah, you can't get in that class unless you want to play that game.
Yeah, exactly. And the ability of that class to play that game is on their ability to leverage being a racial ventriloquist for the majority of black people who are working class and poor. And obviously we see how that politics has worked. It hasn't worked out too well for the majority of black folk.
So
isn't the politics of racial redemption just respectability politics manifested? I think respectability politics is definitely a part of it. Respectability politics basically believing that black people need to demonstrate their best behavior in order to get the liberty to put up your boots, pull up your pants, put on your nice shining suit, dress well, and you'll be able to get treated respectfully. I think that the politics of redemption, politics of respectability, I should say, is definitely a part of that whole racial vindicationism. But all of it comes from this whole kind of worldview that the establishment, the powers that be, the white power structure, I guess some would call, are the ones that have a right to be judging whether or not you can be a human being in the first place. This is how the fatback and biscuits distribution business stays in business.
Oh, I mean, I don't think people really understand that there is a business where they want to hire black people to tell quote unquote white power structure how to even hire black people. And I'm talking like corporate America. The fact that that's a position literally has blown my mind.
Dr. Claus says King and X did all those things and they were still shot. Countless others the same fate. Without a doubt. The history of African people in this country demanded that African people be able to meet their authentic self. Well, what defines authentic self? Authentic self under the auspices of trying to prove yourself to those that are oppressing you, or authentic to your actual material circumstance?
Well, can I ask a question to the chat, Pascal?
Sure.
Before we got on air, there was Pascal and I were talking. I'm trying to figure out if I can shoehorn this certain part I'm writing about in my next thing into the thing, if it might have to be something all of its own. But there's a period in the late 90s where when the Clinton administration deregulates Glass-Steagall, deregulation becomes the driving factor into the growth of a black middle class. It takes the already existing black middle class and really catapults them into the next stratosphere, and it takes the poor and working class and gives them the ability to buy. I mean, we all know how that worked out in 2008 with the Obama years. But during that time, there's a lot of financial growth, albeit maybe a mirage, but it's still happening. And during that time, I think, in my opinion, and I was throwing this idea out with Pascal, and I'll throw it out to you guys, is this time kind of the death of any sort of true black left movement? Because with the deregulation of capital like that with Glass-Steagall, you just saw so many cats all about the free market. And even from a pop culture standpoint, we stopped seeing the Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society movies of inner city black life, and then you get Belly and these like overly gangster glorified films. So I guess my question to you all is, do you see 1999 deregulation and the opening up of these private markets? Do you see that being a factor in kind of killing any sort of black left, and also any sort of like solidarity within poor and working class. Like that's when we're really divorced from any sort of black socialism, and really you double down on the respectability politics of King, I think.
I definitely see that as being the period of heightened neoliberalization of black politics.
Yeah. Jason, I mean, you're talking to a person, Zoom Jones, that's literally leaving the country because I can't afford it.
Dr. Claus, a good question. Basically, isn't Nixon the beginning of weaponizing this politics? I would say that Nixon's black capitalist foray in the early 70s definitely is the beginning of building this kind of notion that black people can fake it till you make it by participating in the capitalist economy, by developing, a black middle class that somehow is going to empower the overall black community, when in reality what we saw is the proliferation and growth of the black poor and underclass as well, even though there was some growth in the black middle class. Shirley, that's a good question. Isn't black history and black pride critical for equipping black people with the tools needed to navigate this hostile world? That's a woo. Shirley comes with a good question. Now, understand something. No one said that people shouldn't teach black history, and no one said that black people should not be proud of themselves or as human beings. What I'm saying is that if you're leveraging the concepts and the notions of that history and that pride based on your relationship to the power structure that is oppressing people overall, because you want to prove that you deserve to be treated fairly, as opposed to fighting that power structure, then you end up doing nothing but saying that we want to celebrate the first black this and the first black that, because it makes us show the world that we can do something. What good is black history and black pride if that history and pride doesn't challenge you to fight the system that you're actually trying to improve for yourself, as opposed to believing that you can become a part of it and only be, Colin Powell, who gets celebrated for the My Lai massacre and starting, the war on terror. And all of a sudden he becomes the Black History Month figure of the day. Is that what being, quote unquote, as you said earlier, Shirley, authentic to our black selves means? How functional we can be to our ability to be used in the same system that has been built on black subjugation in the first place? Or does that humanity come from being able to fight and challenge that system tooth and nail to make it more humane for everyone? So my question to you, Shirley, was that what exactly is that black history and black pride being used to create, or to manifest itself in what exactly? Shirley says, but black history and pride does equip us to fight, not beg for acceptance. I think that depends on how you narrate black history and black pride and how you define it. Some people believe that being Colin Powell is a perfect example of black history and black pride. Some people think that Barack Obama is the perfect history of black. I mean, I would argue that part of the problem that we have today, that the standard of what is considered black historical pride and achievement, is the degree to which black people are able to be used in the same system that is most effectively oppressing them. Clarence Thomas, you name them. Someone answer your question, Jason. I don't think it was the death of black radical politics, as Occupy brought radical politics back, but I do mark it as a period of black political capture by the black elite. That's a very good point, Lyle Evans.
I would disagree that Occupy brought anything to black people.
You don't think Occupy created any kind of politics that radicalized black folk, Jason?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm sure there were some black people there, but those were all the dudes that were going to be there anyway. I think Occupy bringing something to black politics is like Pascal yelling at, I almost said the name, but this is going to go public, yelling at one particular leftist about organizing in black churches.
Oh, Lyle Evans says, I don't think Black Lives Matter happens without Occupy. Well, the question then becomes, what exactly is your perception of Black Lives Matter in terms of as an organizational strategy?
I would disagree with that wholeheartedly as well. I think those women did not need Occupy to. I think Trayvon Martin is what gives you Black Lives Matter, and that has nothing to do with Occupy. These are just my opinions.
I think Shirley's kind of pushing back against my challenging this racial vindicationism. Shirley, do you find some value in racial vindicationism? Do you think that it shouldn't? Do you think that we're being too harsh in saying that it's a dead end politics or worldview? Do you think that there is some value in this kind of politics of redemption? Lyle Evans says Occupy was not BLM is not revolutionary, but it's a start. Well, what are you trying to start exactly?
A foundation.
What exactly are you trying to start? Becomes the question. But yeah, I'd like to hear more from Shirley in terms of what her thought on my position on this politics of redemption and racial vindicationism. A lot of working class folk donated money to Occupy. They started bringing attention to the 99 versus the 1%.
I mean, I saw that, but it was very short lived because the narrative changed immediately within mainstream media. And the narrative became, it's just a bunch of homeless people and drug addicts in these local parks. And they're going to cost you a lot of tax dollars. And even at the time, I was living with a very conservative family that when it first started happening, I remember getting back home from tour and a bunch of people had shut down a bank in San Francisco, like the day we got home from tour. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And I remember coming home and the family was kind of like, yeah, we are the 99%. And then like the next week, the narrative around the whole thing changed to these people are a blight and they're a problem. And then the family kind of followed suit, and then just their love affair or their brief curiosity was killed that easy. So
Shirley said she doesn't see it as racial vindication because she doesn't believe Black people need to be vindicated. I agree. I don't believe that as well. But obviously, we can see that throughout history, that was a strong motivation through a lot of our Black intellectuals and thinkers and even leaders.
I agree with M. Toussaint that says it changed to what do they want. I mean, there was even the people in Occupy will tell you that there were issues with Occupy in general. And I mean, I'm coming from California. I'm not coming from Zuccotti Park in New York. So if you're coming from the East Coast, if you were actually at Zuccotti Park, I'm sure your take on Occupy is going to be very different. But even talking to people very recently, I would say like 2 days ago, that were part of that Zuccotti Park movement, even they look at the way the left was back then to where it is now. They're like, that's a very different left. That was very about no. You know, very much the culture of authenticity and deconstructing coming together and being like, no. So that's my take.
Dr. Close says, I think Kehinde Andrews has had an interesting take on Occupy in his book, The New Age of Empire. We'll have to check that out.
They're decentralized. I agree with that. I think Occupy influenced BLM in the terms of their decentralized structure. I would agree with that.
That's a fair point.
It's not the 1% in Western Massachusetts, for example. It's the vast majority of people there. Gotcha. The problem is that it's the 30 to 60% in developed societies. This is I'm reading from Strom McCallum.
Strom McCallum, man, we missed you on our show yesterday. We had a comrade from the Ozarks talking about organizing in Trump country.
I went back and listened to that when I uploaded it for audio only, and it was a really good show.
Did you like it?
I did. It was a really good show.
Is your critique similar to the discussion of Fanon's critique of negritude the other night? Ooh, good question. And I think that Fanon definitely saw the limitations of negritude because he saw it as a kind of vindicationist movement that was really about kind of not challenging power directly, but about kind of trying to celebrate achievements of Blackness, to demonstrate the human capacity of Blackness to quote unquote white people, and I think that's eventually why he definitely got frustrated with negritude and moved beyond it. My mother worked on Wall Street and stopped by Zuccotti to drop a few bucks off to them. It was paying into, hey, maybe these kids can make something happen before he died. Wow.
Anglo pessimism. So I found out there's an Afro pessimism movement in Brazil, and it's called something else. Or some
Are you serious?
Yeah, and I meant to actually send you something about this, so I apologize. You know, I got my passport today, so I've been looking at all these places. But yeah, I meant to send you something about that. Like, I think we probably, I don't want to do a whole episode on Afro pessimism, but I think our Fanon episode is a good. That's about as deep down that as I feel we should go. But I definitely think maybe at the end of the year, when we do our end of the year show with Cedric and Teray, maybe we should even bring in, see if we can bring in the elder Reed as well, and take a deep dive into Afro pessimism from a global scale. I did go to Brazil in 2019. I toured there, and it was amazing. But I'm not going there now because COVID is real.
Someone asked, what does Black empowerment look like? How is it achieved, especially since there doesn't seem to be an electoral route? Which Black people are you trying to empower? Is the question I want to ask. I'm sure, Bob Johnson and Robert Smith, the Black billionaires, feel pretty empowered. I think empowering Black people who are majority working class and poor is to giving them the material quality of life where they can live a humane existence in a society.
Strong McCallum. I was mostly in Sao Paulo, all over the south of Brazil, and then we spent our last 4 days on the island of Florianopolis, which was pretty dope.
Jesse says a full Marxist dismantling of Afro-pessimism would be amazing. I think that's definitely necessary, not only so much on a podcast, but in a written form as well. But what I notice is that whenever people challenge Afro-pessimism from a Marxist perspective, they always move the goalpost and says, they acknowledge class. There's always...
It's a good job for Paul McComb.
Yeah, that feels like a job for Paul McComb.
The one thing I hate about Afro-pessimism, because I think it comes out of postmodernism, you get the same kind of critiques that you get whenever we talk about postmodernism from a negative light. It's always like, well, you don't know postmodernism, or you're not addressing it right, or why don't you get a real postmodernist on there? And everyone that you referenced that is a postmodernist isn't a real postmodernist. And it's the same thing with Afro-pessimism. It's the exact same rhetoric we get from the negative comments. Is always like, well, that's not really what Afro-pessimism is. And it's like, it's just like it's everything and nothing all at the same time. Is what you're telling me.
I totally agree with that, without a doubt. We need more Black billionaires because you want to go to the Rock Nation brunch. That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Funny. That's hella funny. Can you imagine hanging out with Jay-Z?
No, not really. Well, I guess. I don't know. So, in other words, Afro-pessimism and postmodernism are a snake eating its own ass.
I've never heard that term before, Jesse, and I enjoy it. I enjoy that term. Shirley, don't make Steve stop playing, because now in my head I'm envisioning what would happen if I did go to brunch with Jay-Z. I was in Santa Barbara yesterday on my day off, and I did look for Oprah. Alas, she was not there.
Does Oprah live in Santa Barbara?
Yeah.
Wow. There was a guest on Majority Report that expanded on the fat backed biscuits factory through the fast food industry earlier this week. Made me think of neocolonialism. I heard about that guest.
Did she actually say
that book
fat back and biscuits?
franchise, right?
But did she actually say Fatback and Biscuits? Was that the woman, the black woman? Because if she said that, that's a lot. Toussaint knows. Toussaint, was there a black woman on Majority Report that said Fatback and Biscuits? Please tell me there was.
I know, that would be kind of awesome.
Who's Tanya Fields?
We could have her along with Tanya Fields.
Was Tanya Fields kin to Barbara Fields?
Oh, the chat said Fatback and Biscuits. Oh, that's funny. The term is circulating. She didn't say the term, but it was totally a take on Fatback and Biscuits. Totally a tale of Fatback and Biscuits.
That's interesting. I've been wanting to watch that episode. I think
I want to go back and check it out.
She was going on Nixon and McDonald's.
Shirley said Jason looking for Oprah is proof that Jason wants to be a kept man.
If they only knew where I was yesterday, Pascal.
Jason has been Mr. Popularity lately, kids.
I do not want to.
Said it was a good show. I want to check that out. Yeah, Shirley's got your number. She's like, you want to be a kept man.
No, that's why I'm moving to live alone. Maybe I'll get a small dog.
The rabbit hole that you could go in with the World Bank and the IMF.
Bourgeoisization. Oh shit.
Jason is what happens when the cutest boy in class grows up.
You guys are hella silly, but I really wish I would have recorded some of the shit that I saw yesterday because it was rather hilarious.
Oh man. We should try to get that woman as a guest on our show. I've heard good things about that book franchise.
Yeah, I'm going to start booking again. I think we sent that email out to Donald Harris, so let's cross our fingers that we can.
Oh, you found that?
I found it. So let's cross our fingers that we can make that happen. That's going to be pretty awesome.
That would be interesting. And the degree in which the State Department will be hounding us down will be not that interesting.
Why is there an echo on our phone all of a sudden?
Yeah, exactly. That will be more than spicy.
Just to let everyone know, tomorrow we are doing a show with Doug Lane and Are You Serious of cyberpunk fame. We're going to talk about how the idea of a cyber utopia has turned into a cyber dystopia.
My allergies are acting up. That's what's happening, kids. Vicks Raven Rub is the old school remedy, though.
I hope one day I can meet a lot of you in person because some of the shit that you guys say is fucking hilarious. Oh, next week, by the way, I'm going to be in LA at Stories Bookstore with Doug Lane, Daniel Bessner, filmmaker Kara Rogers, and Are You Serious? We're going to have a panel kind of about what we're going to be talking about tomorrow night. Drink some NyQuil.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate the suggestion.
All right, this is devolving into you guys making fun of us.
Shirley wants to meet me in person. Oh, Shirley, I'd love to meet you too.
It's going to happen, Shirley, because we're going to get to 1,000 patrons and have to do our live show somewhere on the West Coast. You got your passport?
We're going to have Adolph Reed next week on November 4th, kids.
Do you have your passport, Pascal?
I got to renew it.
Oh, it only took me a week.
Okay.
Renew your passports. We can do a show in Mexico.
A show in Mexico. Uh-oh.
Doesn't that sound fun?
That sounds fly.
We so fly. We so fly.
We so fly. We so fly.
We'll be talking about Adolf Reed's article. Oh, excuse me, article.
The whole world, the whole country is a Reichstag.
Yeah. So get your questions ready. Yes, the deep state is hella trying to get rid of me. They're like, get the fuck out. And then you'll definitely be silenced where you're going. But let's go ahead and play this clip for next week.
From High Technology, the computer store, introducing Apple II, the easy-to-operate home computer. Just hook it up to your TV to create dazzling color displays. Or you can balance your checkbook. Kids can teach themselves arithmetic. Or the family can invent their own Pong games. The possibilities are endless. It's called Apple II, the personal computer. See it at High Technology, the computer store.
Sitting down to your morning coffee, turning on your home computer to read the day's newspaper. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem. In fact, both local San Francisco papers are investing a lot of money to try and get a service just like that started. Science editor Steve Newman reports on one person already using the brand new system.
8 newspapers around the country are currently in the computer network, and within the next few weeks, 3 others will join in.
This is an experiment. We're trying to figure out what it's going to mean to us as editors and reporters and what it means to the home user. And we're not in it to make money. We're probably not going to lose a lot, but we aren't going to make much either.
Both the Examiner and Chronicle began service within the last 2 weeks and printed full-page ads about it. Of the estimated 2,000 to 3,000 home computer owners in the Bay Area, the Chronicle reports over 500 have responded by sending back coupons. Even though the electronic newspaper isn't as spiffy looking as the ads imply, people using the system are excited about its potential.
With this system, we have the option not only of seeing the newspaper on the screen, but also optionally we can copy it. So anything we're interested in, we could go back in again and copy it onto paper and save it.
Steve Newman, U-Center 4.
Well, it takes over 2 hours to receive the entire text of the newspaper over the phone, and with an hourly use charge of $5, the new telepaper won't be much competition for the 20-cent street edition.
There was once a time where information and communications technology were seen as having an emancipatory potential. To some in the 80s and 90s, we were on the verge of a techno-utopia. However, in recent years, this dream has turned to dust with the rise of big tech capitalism, algorithmic data collection, mass surveillance, and social media disinformation. What happened to the dream of a better tomorrow? Do we live in a cyber dystopia? And what are the prospects for emancipation from this freaky machine? We'll ask these questions and more. This is Revolution.
People do forget that there was no state-of-the-art in personal computing when I wrote Neuromancer, and that's why I was using the typewriter. Neuromancer and the first Macintosh were released in the same year, and someone told me recently in the same month. That's difficult for young people to imagine, I know. But I didn't know anyone who had a personal computer. There were almost none.
I understood that in a sense what you were talking about is that the power there was the power of the imagination, not the power of the machine.
When I wrote Neuromancer, there was effectively no internet to extrapolate from. I made it up. The cyberspace I made up isn't being used in Neuromancer in the way that we're using the internet today. In Neuromancer, it's all corporate, and a few cybernetic car thieves are skulking through it, attempting to steal tidbits of information. People aren't using it to exchange recipes with their relatives in West Germany. People aren't using it personally, and in my later work, I've had to deal with what the internet has become.
Right.
So I think that accounts for the difference. And what the internet has become is as much a surprise to me as the collapse of the Soviet Union was. Those are, definitely two things I didn't foresee about the future.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your. Did you like that ending?
That was dope.
I thought that was interesting. That's the author that actually coins the term cyberspace.
Interesting.
And when he says he didn't think the internet was going to be what it ended up being in '97, and he didn't think the Soviet Union would collapse, that was interesting. So I'm kind of excited to go down those rabbit holes with the show tomorrow.
Indeed. Well, I hope you all enjoy our Mau Mau Hour on racial vindicationism and the politics of redemption. We will be having the Mau Mau Hour again the last Wednesday of November, coming close to the holidays. That might be Thanksgiving, actually. So around Thanksgiving. So
someone says, Pascal, who's your favorite Queens rapper? Pascal says Nas.
My favorite. This is going to be funny to you. My favorite rapper is actually not from Queens, but my favorite Queens rapper is Run DMC. That's actually my favorite Queens rapper duo. My favorite MC of all time is Big Daddy Kane. And yes, I believe Big Daddy Kane did beat KRS-One in the verses.
Oh, you watched it?
I watched some of it, yeah. I'm a Big Daddy
Were
Kane.
they actually like rapping against each other, or was it that thing where they just play each other's songs?
They rapped against each other in some parts. Kane was very good. So was the KRS-One though. I don't do horror. I'm not a horror. Well, I did like. Does Jaws considered a horror movie?
Oh yeah,
I like Jaws.
Kane and KRS could go for two. Are they in their 60s?
No, they're in their 50s.
I mean, it's got to be because Biz was in his late 50s, so I think Kane is older than Biz, so he's got to be in his 60s.
Jane McLevy as a guest would be pretty awesome.
I have not reached out, I'll be honest.
She would be an awesome guest.
Public
Shirley's
Enemy.
favorite rap group is Public Enemy. That's because you're so radical, Shirley. That's why. You wanted to burn things.
That was one of my favorite songs, Burn Hollywood Burn, with Public Enemy and Ice Cube. Sorry, Ice Cube. Ice-T. Burn Hollywood Burn, I smell a riot going on. Was it Big Daddy Kane?
Yeah, Big Daddy Kane,
and Ice Cube.
Yep.
That was in the middle of the East Coast West Coast rap beef, right?
That's correct.
Burn Hollywood, burn Hollywood. See, if I thought that we could, if we could play like music like that, I would so do that. But we could get pulled down so quick. We've had Sharice Burdenstelli on the show.
We did have Dr. CBS on the show. It was an audio only podcast.
Yes.
All righty.
Well, on that note, thank you guys for joining us for another Mau Mau Hour. Do you want to give them the sign off, Pascal, that you give them?
We are